Ken Bridges, I believe, is the most significant man, African American, to have lived and performed since Martin Luther King. Now, the world didn't know that yet, but we did. We lost a great one in Ken Bridges. But not all is lost, because Ken was able to drop a lot of seeds all over the country, impregnating people of African descent about this thing called Mata.
Now, my brother comes along and he walks away from making $250,000 a year. And they said, we don't understand that. and why did you walk away? He said, because, people weren't being treated fairly. I mean, we got to, and whatever. But on several occasions he did that, and we were all scratching our heads, wondering why would he do something like that. But the real issue here, and I think we all have it, he had a vision. I mean, he saw a lot more than we did.
My dad's teachings that have led me into Masa have probably started from the day I was born, and I didn't know that, but they probably, they were there. He always encouraged me from when I was very young, because that he always was in entrepreneur opportunities. I never really saw him working for anyone else. So from the beginning, that always encouraged me to, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to do my own thing when it's time. So right there, it was just having that spirit of doing for myself was in me from the beginning.
Ken talked about his family, his kids. I mean, that was part of his life. And that made me feel good, because when you see a man of his stature that spend that time. So I want to leave this. Ken was a man of initiative. No question about it. He went where other people were afraid to go. He's a man that believed. Ken has courage. Ken was loyalty. I mean, he cared about Mata and the principles that he had in Mata.
Ken Bridges really did love black people. Where he and I absolutely agree, where he and I absolutely come together, is our love of our own people. And here's what I want you to consider. If in fact you are going to honor the legacy of Ken Bridges, see, the legacy of Ken Bridges has not been fully worked out yet. The legacy of Ken Bridges really depends on you and I and what we do with the vision. But if you are really going to honor Ken Bridges, then you have got to make a commitment to turn your thought process around. And don't see, it's not enough to be African-centered on an emotional level. See, it doesn't make any difference if you cornrow your hair, if you give your baby an African name, if you wear African clothes and behave like an ordinary Negro. It is necessary for the African in us. Hold that up now. Let me see that. There's 1 minute. All right. It is necessary for the African in us to actually become manifest by our behavior, by our actions.
Ken generated that type of feeling and sentiment in a great number of people, thousands of people, in fact. Ken was an extraordinary person.
It is most appropriate and with great honor that the A. Philip Randolph Pullman Porter Museum, in the spirit of Asa Philip Randolph, honor Brother Ken Bridges, co-founder of Mata, a giant among men who now walks among the ancestors, with the dedication of the Ken Bridges Lecture Hall and the launching of the Ken Bridges Institute on Black Economics. Thank you.
And whereas the lecture hall is being dedicated to Ken Bridges as a man whose destiny was to inspire others to embrace the principles of black economic empowerment, therefore be resolved by the Senate of the 93rd General Assembly of the State of Illinois that we commend the establishment of the Ken H. Bridges Lecture Hall and Institute on Black Economics, and it's signed by me, but it's also on behalf of our President of the Senate, Emil Jones, as well. So, to the family.
I just want to thank everyone for honoring Ken this way. You know, it's just very impressive when you've known someone so closely for other people to have appreciated those same qualities. And I just appreciate Lynn and Phyllis and the museum for honoring, you know, Ken's legacy, because to me that's the greatest thing now of all of this, is to remember the message and the man for what he had to offer to the community and to the world. Thank you.
From the very first moment I met Ken, what he did is he's always doing this stuff about hugging you, and he makes it so personal. He's smiling and hugging, smiling and hugging. This portrait up, he's always doing that. And my leader said, greater love than this no man hath, than that a man lay down his life for his friends. That's what Ken did. He loved us. He loved us personally. And this love that I'm talking about has got to be personal. It can't be something abstract. He wanted all of you to love. He wanted you to love Mata and love each other. And actions speak louder than words. If you really love each other, stand up and hug each other and tell each other you love. Stand up and hug somebody. Hug them. Say, I love you. I love you. I love you.
I looked at Ken Bridges and I said, look at this man here. He is an excellent speaker. I've been speaking all my life. And of course, Willie came and said, you're not as good as Ken Bridges. And I said to Willie,
Ken was engaged in a quest. Dr. Robinson, Ken's meeting with Dr. Robinson was like putting a halogen light inside a 60-watt bulb. And Dr. Robinson turned lights on for Ken that gave him insight as to what he was fumbling around in the dark trying to do. And that is the understanding that you have to understand your people in order to understand yourself. You can't understand yourself in a vacuum. I'm not there, but I know all y'all stand in the shower singing, and it all sounds good to you till you turn off that water, right? Till somebody else come up and say, that don't sound good. In a vacuum, everything is just whatever we think it is. So you can't understand yourself in a vacuum. Now, Ken understood something else that all of us have started to figure out that are on this path. You cannot accomplish unraveling this mystery without going backwards. You have to go backwards in order to understand what is going on. We have to go back and understand our traditions, and understand our people, and understand how they thought, and understand what was important to them. We have to go backwards. So to the people around us that are really standing stationary, they're not going anywhere, they're standing stationary. When they start to feel that you're going backwards, they even tell you that. They say, boy, you're going out the world backwards. But you're actually going forward. It just doesn't appear that way.
The man. And he was another light-skinned brother.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and he was radical with it. Hotep, wear the African clothes, said, y'all wear a suit, I'm wearing African. He was just out. He was radical with it. And it's all, why is always the light-skinned Dr. Robinson, Brother Klingman, Quad David, always the light-skinned brother is more black than everybody.
Farrakhan,
you know,
Huey P. Newton,
Elijah Muhammad, light-skinned,
brothers,
yellow
brothers.
You know why?
Yeah, we're gonna tell y'all why.
Because they took the dark-skinned brothers and stole them from Africa, but they stole our color. So we double mad. We want our black back.
That's right. I guess y'all probably heard through the grapevine by now, but Ken talked to the 5 regional directors Thursday night after being with Al and Dr. Lomax and, you know, John Brown and the meeting they had in Kernersville. Brother got on the phone very, very excited. Very excited. And as Haru mentioned, hey, Haru, you got me cracking up. Ken did like 98% of the talking. We couldn't get a word in because brother was gone. He was excited.
Some of us call it a struggle and some of us call it a quest. The reason why quest, because Ken would say many times that he would talk to the board of directors about business, and he would have to remind them that this is about business, but it ain't about business. It's about money in our community, but it ain't about money. It's about recapturing who we are.
I can remember times that we were talking on the phone, and I said to Ken, you know, man, I would love to go bike riding. And you know what? We talked, and I went and got a bicycle built for 2, and Ken and I rode that bike all through Asbury Park, and he said, man, he said, look like the back ain't doing no work, bruh. and you know, Ken worked, as you know, for Scott Paper Company, and I had vision. I mean, I didn't have eyes. I lost my sight when I was a young child. But Ken was the first person that I ran into who understood that even though you didn't have natural sight, you could have vision. I mean, you know, when we connected, it was like, oh my God, this man is awesome. Because he puts no limitation. In fact, he pushes and encourages and inspired me to do even more. And what I want to say in closing is this, is that, you know, one day after he kind of pulled back from the Amway situation, and I was talking to Ken about what I was doing, and you know, and he was always encouraging me and all that good stuff, and I was doing a little business and, you know, home shopping. Now, you know, I was blind, so I couldn't shop for nobody, but I was always good at coming up with ideas and getting other folk to help me do it. And so Ken said, well, man, tell me about this business, bruh. And I was telling him about it and the problems I was having with drivers and showing up the folk house 3 hours late with the food and all this kind of crazy stuff. And so Ken said, man, let me come over and talk with you. And he did. And the end result of all of that, and I'm sure Jocelyn remembers, we ended up hooking up together. And I'm gonna tell you something, Ken was riding around town. I had Ken riding in his nice Cadillac with eggs and greens in the back seat, trying to find mom and pop stores. I mean, it was just, when we look back at it, we used to just laugh at the things that we did together. I will never forget Ken Bridges.
Ken was so articulate and so passionate, and he had such a consistent, persistent message. And of course, when you lose a spokesperson like that, it's a loss. It has to be. He was a Malcolm X in terms of his ability to convey his message and his passion. Yeah, it's a definite loss.
I could see what I call heaven. You can call it whatever you want to, but I call it heaven. And I could see all those people you were talking about. You mentioned Jesus, you mentioned Gandhi, you mentioned Malcolm, you mentioned Martin, you mentioned all kinds of people, Harriet Tubman and so forth. And I can see all those people on 10/11. And they're all up there, and it's 9:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden, a bullet blew Ken Bridges away, and suddenly he's there with all of them. And they all look at him. And Ken says, my brothers, my sisters, I can see all that. I can see all that. Can't you see that? Can't you see that? You know, that happened. That actually happened. You know, all those folks saw him. They saw him. And they just grabbed him. And they were so glad that he came because they loved him.
If I should die on my way to freedom, at least I was on my way. At least I was on the road, pushing against the winds of change and pushing against the grain, making my way toward freedom. At least each morning that God blessed me to awaken and put my feet on the floor, I stood up and stood tall, put one foot in front of the other, and began that day once again on my way to freedom. At least I was on my way, each day with my queen, Jocelyn, and my precious children around me, and each moment pressing toward a future in which they would finally be able to rest from our long and harrowing journey. I knew there would be no rest for me because I was on my way to freedom. And freedom is always an uphill climb. But if I should die on my way to freedom, at least I was on my way. Unlike some of the children of Israel, unlike some of Harriet Tubman's, those who were on her freedom train, and unlike some of our brothers and sisters today, I was always determined to go forward. I was making my way to freedom and nothing would turn me around. At least I was standing, but never standing still. At least I was walking and never looking back. At least I was running, but never running in place. At least I was striving, but never striving in vain. If I should die on my way to freedom, to the sweet light of freedom, at least on my journey, the view improved every day. At least I met and loved new brothers and sisters along the way. At least I persevered, pressed on, kept moving despite the daily roadblocks. At least I trusted God to make a way for me out of no way. And He always did, because He never fails. If I should die on my way to freedom, there's just one thing that I ask. Put your arms of love around my queen and my children, and keep going. Fill my space with someone strong and unafraid, someone who can chart new courses, someone who loves and trusts his people enough to continue on to freedom. If I should die on my way to freedom, whether I'm leading or following, pass the word down the line, distribute portions of my essence to my dear brothers and sisters, and tell them to keep going. Tell them I'm watching them. Tell them I love them. Tell them the chain is not broken. It just got stuck for a little while as we were going through a tight space. Tell them what I told them when we had our family talks. Let's go get our freedom.
The minute I came in contact with Ken, I knew exactly what Ken was about. I could understand Ken perfectly. Because you see, to understand a person, you have to understand the path that they're on. You have to understand what's happening between the lines, what's going on that you can't see. And Ken was on a path. And a lot of us understand Ken perfectly because we're all on that same path. And so when you get on this path, you meet the people that are on that path. You understand them instantly when you meet them. And Ken was a gardener. And he was gathering all of us as the seeds to be planted in the garden. And as soon as he put us in touch with each other, we recognized instantly that we all knew each other for a long, long time, and we were having a big family reunion. So that's why I'm here, because I understand Ken perfectly. Ken and I had conversations that had nothing to do with Mata. We talked a lot, and we talked very little about Mata, but we talked a whole lot about this path. Because Mata is part of the outgrowth, the manifestation of this path.
You have a choice. What you gonna believe today? Dead and buried and gone, or transcendent and even more powerful?
What you gonna believe? What are you gonna believe? What do you believe? What do you believe? On high, no sniper, no bad news, all good and powerful, divinely ordered. Divinely ordered. Before he got here, they knew the day he'd be called back to the council of elders on the other side. They knew.
So what we have to do, when we talk about the Ken legacy, not only do we do it for Ken, we do it for the Ken in us. I feel some Ken coming. Uh-oh. I feel some Ken coming. I feel some Ken. Hotep. Brother, what's up, my brother? Oh, we in the championship now. We're fighting for the black man, fighting for the black woman, fighting for economic empowerment. Oh, we winning now. We winning now. We jabbing, we uppercutting, we hooking, we winning. We the champions. Be the champ. We winning every day.
Ken now belongs to the ages, but he is not gone. When that autumn breeze whispers in our ear today and tomorrow, it is Ken urging us on to full freedom. When that winter's wind steps up its cold breeze, it is Ken telling us to forget the cold and keep on to full freedom. When you hear a beautiful song of a bird in the spring, it will be Ken reminding us to keep on to full freedom. When summer and its beauty comes, it reminds us of Ken's beautiful smile as he says, "For freedom for my people, I bled for it, I died for it." So keep on keeping on. Keep on to full freedom. For Ken we say Ashe. 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 Ashe.